incorporating the innovation economy into procurement. Well, joining us to speak about that today is John Washington, founder and proprietor of Innovation Garage. John, welcome.
Thanks, Russell.
John, it's an intriguing title that we're giving to our talk here, to speak about the innovation economy. But maybe we need to back up and define our terms. What do we mean by that? Let's define it.
Sure. The innovation economy is actually a new method of looking at the economy through innovation factors. So specifically, you would look at the effect of policy on innovation within an enterprise, and you'd also look at trade and technology within the innovation economy. So it's actually like a new economic study of the economy. Traditional economic factors don't apply, and you look at how government policy affects growth of an economy, and innovation, technology, trade, and tax. Those elements of policy is what you look at.
Well, you mentioned economic and policy and technology factors. You're indicating that they are at play here, but let's drill down into that and discuss just exactly what we mean by that. Help us out.
Sure. So specifically for innovation economy, there's a study through the Innovation, Technology, and Information Foundation, a book written by Stephen Enzel and Rob Atkinson, that talks about the innovation economy and how you're translating those elements from innovation into the economy and how government policy plays a big role in that. And basically looks at tax, trade, technology. And those things are very important in how a supply chain group and a procurement team needs to look at innovation in the economy.
Well, now that leads to, I think, where a number of viewers want to get to, and that is, where does the supply chain team go from this point on? If the task is for them to capture value from innovation, how do they do that? Walk us through it.
So there's actually kind of two factors that you would look at. The first is an internal factor. So especially in a large corporation, a supply chain team can look at capturing innovation from their suppliers. And it's also important for a supply chain team to be a front-end value driver for the enterprise. Okay, so they can work with the legal groups, the risk groups, the development groups, the information technology, the IT groups within a large corporation. And they can be the value driver to capture innovation from suppliers and from other players in their ecosystem. So that's one reason, one method that a team can gather innovation. An external factor is, again, working with suppliers. Okay, so how do you capture innovation from your suppliers? And a couple things that you'd like to do in that specific step is you'd like to really talk to your supply base about how to become the best customer. Okay, how can you be that customer of choice? And there's steps that supply chain teams can go through. They can conduct a customer of choice survey where they actually ask their supply base, how are we doing? Are we easy to do business with? Are we difficult to do business with? And they can take the results of that survey and then actually formulate an innovation strategy for their enterprise. Okay, so it's a combination of the supply chain team being the value driver, being the first to recognize that a procurement group or supply chain group can bring innovation to the enterprise, and be that focal point group to draw from legal, risk, information technology teams, and even the development teams. And so that's a role that a procurement team can play and a supply chain team can play in regards to innovation.
By definition, the supply chain team cannot be a silo unto itself, but has to work with all of the various functions. But now, of course, we're doing that with a view, as you say, toward capturing the value of the innovation that may be resident in each one of those.
Right.
Those functions. You know, we were speaking earlier, you spoke about a leap innovation and a core innovation. I wish you would speak to that now, define the difference between the two. Let's walk through that.
Sure. So a core innovation, if you think about it from an enterprise perspective, a corporation has a product line, a service line, some offering that they provide to their customers. A core innovation is something that takes that kind of platform product or service that you have and moves it to the next level. It's the thing that kind of continues your revenue generation into the outlier years. And that's a core innovation. It could be a platform product that you have. And what are you going to do to that platform product to continue to gain customers and gain share in the marketplace? Those are things that we would consider a core innovation. Now, a leap innovation is actually something that is ahead of the customer. Dr. Edwards Deming, that put together a lot of the quality policy in Japan and trained up Japanese manufacturers on quality methods, talked a lot about 94% of the problems are the result of the system, 6% are the result of the worker. So it's very important for the enterprise to recognize and focus on the system of innovation. And when we talk about a leap innovation, that's the thing that gets you ahead of the customer. That's the thing that entices the customer to want to continue to do business with you. And those are things that might be 3, 5, or 7 years ahead of the market. And what's very important in companies is to recognize that you need someone to shepherd and steward those leap innovations. You need a methodology and a system to capture those leap innovations and recognize that you may be ahead of the marketplace. And that's a great place to be, because then you can entice your customer to the next generation offering. And you also have to recognize that at times your customer may not be ready for that leap innovation yet. And so you have to have within your enterprise a method to capture those, and a focus on the system is very important.
You know, you anticipate my next question. I just wonder, who is it that is in charge of innovation? I mean, is there such a person as a chief innovation officer, perhaps?
So many Fortune 1000 corporations are starting to develop a chief innovation officer function. And typically it's becoming a leadership role for those folks within companies. What I would advocate is that the procurement and supply chain teams find out who those folks are within the enterprise. And it's okay to be that first one to bring the value to the enterprise in regards to innovation. But what you'll see over the next few years as a result of the innovation economy, again, this driving of factors of innovation, technology, tax, and trade, and government policy is going to be a very important influence on procurement and supply chain teams. So you need to recognize those signals. The supply chain teams need to focus on a system of innovation, how to capture that from a system perspective, and then the procurement and supply chain teams can also be that engine to gather that information and drive additional value through innovation for their companies.
You've convinced me. I want to bring the value that can be captured, from this innovation economy. I want that to happen in my company. Mm-hmm. This is my question to you. What are the final steps that I need to take in order to ensure that phenomenon occurs in my enterprise? What are you telling me?
You have to focus on the system to innovate, and it's very important to have your staff and your team members have a methodology to approach innovation, okay? So from an interrelationship perspective, from person to person, it's how you talk to each other. If you're talking about a project or an offering, and you may have concerns about that project, you talk about how are we going to problem solve those concerns, okay? And you develop a method to kind of fail fast and fail cheap. How will you do a small scale test to address your concern or your death threat to your project? How would you do a small-scale test, solve that problem, and then move on to the next element of your product or your offering or your process that you're trying to develop? So how individuals talk to each other in a team is very important. And from there, you have to focus on a system and a capture method. So to get the teams, the supply chain team, the legal team, the risk team, all to recognize that innovation is part of their job, and that focus on the system, put everyone's energy on focusing on the system. It's not a certain silos issue that the company doesn't move fast. It's not legal's fault. It's not risk's fault. You focus on the system, put everybody's energy towards that, and then you start to drive value and a lot of creativity in the supply chain. You'll develop joint development agreements with your suppliers that you didn't have. You'll also have folks to have a wider field of vision about possibilities of innovation, that it could come from a large corporation, a small to medium enterprise. It could come from a small mom and pop shop, and you have to have that visibility and that recognition that innovation comes from anywhere, and you can capture that and ultimately grow the revenue, positive margin revenue of your business.
You know, often we have this amorphous goal called innovation and no real guidelines as to how to get there. But you dropped by today and you gave us a methodology for achieving that very thing. John, I want to thank you for speaking with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Russell.
That's John Washington, Innovation Garage, and speaking with us today about incorporating the innovation economy into procurement. Thank you for watching.